If you study how wealth is actually created in the real world, something interesting appears. Most millionaires didn't get rich from winning the lottery. They didn't suddenly inherit huge fortunes, and they didn't become wealthy by simply saving money in the bank. Instead, they built their wealth by owning a small number of very specific things: assets. But here's the surprising part. There are thousands of different investments in the world: stocks, businesses, real estate, crypto, commodities, startups. Yet when researchers study how millionaires actually build wealth, they find that the majority of them rely on just 3 major types of assets. 3. That means if someone understands these 3 wealth builders early in life, their financial future can look completely different. So in this video, we're going to break down the 3 assets that have created the majority of millionaires in the modern economy, and more importantly, why these assets work so well over time.
Now, let's dive into why assets matter more than income. One of the biggest misconceptions about wealth is the idea that income automatically leads to financial freedom. At first, this belief makes sense. If someone earns more money, they should become wealthier, right? But when you look closely at the financial lives of millions of people around the world, you notice something surprising. Many individuals earn extremely high salaries, yet still struggle financially. Professional athletes, doctors, lawyers, corporate executives, all of these careers can generate large incomes, yet history is full of examples of people in these professions who still ended up facing serious financial problems. So what's going wrong? The answer lies in the difference between income and assets. Income is the money you earn from working. Assets are things that can generate money without requiring your constant effort, and this difference changes everything. When someone depends only on income, their financial life is directly tied to their ability to work. If they stop working, the income stops. But when someone owns assets, the situation becomes very different, because assets can continue producing income, value, or growth even when the owner is not actively working. This is why many financially successful individuals focus less on maximizing income and more on accumulating assets. Assets create financial momentum, and over time, that momentum can become incredibly powerful.
Now, the first asset we are going to look into is businesses. The first major wealth-building asset is ownership of a business. Businesses have historically created more wealth than almost any other financial vehicle, and the reason is simple: a successful business can scale. This means that once the system of the business is built, the revenue it generates can grow far beyond the amount of time or effort originally invested. Consider a small local restaurant. In the beginning, the owner might work long hours every day, but as the business grows, systems develop, managers are hired, staff members handle daily operations, and eventually the owner's role shifts from working inside the business to managing its growth. At that point, the business begins operating almost like a financial engine. Revenue flows through the company, expenses are paid, and the remaining profit becomes income for the owner. Many entrepreneurs eventually take this process even further. They open additional locations, expand product lines, or build entirely new businesses using the experience gained from the first one. This is why business ownership has historically been one of the most powerful tools for wealth creation.
Let's move to the second asset on the list: real estate. Another major wealth-building asset is real estate. For centuries, land and property have been one of the most reliable stores of wealth. Unlike many financial investments, real estate offers multiple ways to build financial growth at the same time. First, property can generate rental income. Tenants pay monthly rent to occupy the space. Second, property values often increase over long periods as cities grow and populations expand. Third, property owners can use financing strategies that allow them to control valuable assets with relatively small upfront capital. These combined factors make real estate extremely powerful. Many investors begin with a single rental property. Over time, they acquire additional properties, eventually building entire portfolios of income-generating assets. And once enough properties are owned, the rental income can begin covering major living expenses. At that point, financial independence becomes a realistic possibility.
Moving to the third asset on our list: ownership in companies, stocks.
The third major asset that has created an enormous number of millionaires over the past century is ownership in companies. More specifically, stocks. A stock represents a small piece of ownership in a company. When you buy a share of stock, you are essentially becoming a partial owner of that business. Now, this may not sound very exciting at first. After all, buying a small digital share through an investment app doesn't feel the same as owning a building or running a company. But the impact can be just as powerful. Because when a company grows, the value of that ownership grows as well. If the company becomes more profitable, expands into new markets, or increases its revenue, investors benefit from that success. Over long periods of time, this simple system has created extraordinary results. When you look at the historical performance of large stock markets around the world, you see a pattern that repeats across decades. Companies innovate. Businesses grow. Products improve. And as these things happen, the value of the companies tends to increase. Investors who own shares in those companies participate in that growth. This is why many long-term investors see stocks as a way to own a piece of the global economy. When businesses around the world become more productive, more profitable, and more efficient, investors benefit from that progress. And over time, that growth compounds.
Now, why these three assets work so well? Now that we've identified the three major assets, businesses, real estate, and stocks, the next question becomes obvious. Why do these particular assets create so much wealth? The answer comes down to a simple principle. They produce value. Each of these assets contributes something meaningful to the economy. Businesses create products and services. Real estate provides housing, offices, and infrastructure. Public companies innovate and build technologies that shape the modern world. Because these assets produce value, people are willing to pay for them. Customers pay for products. Tenants pay for housing. Investors pay for ownership in growing companies. And as demand for these assets increases, their value often rises as well. This is why many experienced investors focus on acquiring assets that serve real economic purposes. Assets tied to real productivity tend to grow alongside the economy itself.
So, what are the wealth snowball effect? One of the most fascinating things about asset ownership is what happens over time. In the beginning, progress can feel slow. An investor buys their first few stocks. A property owner acquires a single rental property. An entrepreneur launches a small business. At first, the financial impact might seem modest, but something powerful begins to happen as time passes. Income generated from those assets can be reinvested into additional assets. Rental income might be used to buy another property. Dividends from stocks might be used to purchase more shares. Business profits might fund expansion into new markets. And as this process repeats, a snowball effect begins to develop. Each asset starts contributing to the growth of the next one. Over long periods of time, this compounding effect can become incredibly powerful. What started as a single investment slowly evolves into an entire portfolio. And that portfolio can eventually generate income streams that no longer depend entirely on personal labor.
Now let's discuss about the most powerful aspect of all this, the importance of patience. One of the biggest misunderstandings about wealth building is the belief that it happens quickly. Modern media often focuses on stories of overnight success, but when you examine the financial journeys of most successful investors, entrepreneurs, and property owners, the story usually looks very different. Wealth tends to grow slowly at first. Years pass with steady effort and disciplined decisions. Small investments accumulate, skills develop, opportunities appear gradually. And then something interesting happens. After enough time has passed, the results begin to accelerate. This is because compounding rewards patience. When assets have enough time to grow, the returns they generate begin producing their own returns. And that's when financial progress begins to feel much faster. The challenge is that many people give up before they reach this stage. They expect dramatic results within a short period of time. But wealth building is rarely a sprint.
More often, it's a long journey of consistent effort and thoughtful decision-making.
Once someone understands the power of assets, the next step is surprisingly simple. Start small. The first investment doesn't need to be massive. It could be a modest stock portfolio, a side business, or saving toward the down payment for a first property. The key is not the size of the first step. The key is beginning the process. Because once the first asset begins producing value, the path forward becomes much clearer. Experience builds confidence, knowledge improves decision-making, and over time, the portfolio begins expanding. The most important thing is developing the habit of thinking like an owner rather than only a worker. Workers trade time for money. Owners build systems that generate value over time. And that difference can transform someone's entire financial future.
When you look at how most millionaires actually build their wealth, the pattern becomes very clear. They don't rely on a single paycheck. They build ownership, businesses, real estate, stocks. These assets form the foundation of financial growth across generations. But understanding these assets is only the beginning, because once someone starts building wealth, a new challenge appears. Many people earn more money as their lives progress, but strangely, their financial situation never improves. Income rises, yet financial stress remains. In the next video, we're going to explore one of the most dangerous financial traps that keeps millions of people from ever building real wealth, a trap known as lifestyle inflation. And once you see how it works, you'll start noticing it everywhere. Thanks for watching. Kindly subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so as to get notified anytime I drop a video like this. See you in my next video.